We are talking about radicals and radical functions. Let me zoom this in just a little bit. So the things we need to understand is that if we're looking at the radical, and that's going to be your radical sign, the A is our radicand, and the N is the index, which tells us if we have a square root, a cubed root, a fourth root, a fifth root. We need to know that if n is an even positive integer, then in the homework it's going to tell you that it's the absolute value of a. If it's an odd, then it'll just be whatever a is, because you can't take the square root of a negative number is y that is, which is what we're going to talk about next. You can't take the even root, a square root, a fourth root, a sixth root of a negative number, but you can take the odd root of a negative number. The reason being is that if we have 5 squared is equal to 25, negative 5 squared gets us equal to 25. So if we have both positive or both negative, we can get there to the value of 25. But when we're looking at getting to a negative number, we can't multiply a positive and a negative. Well, we have to multiply a positive and a negative to get a negative 25. But when we're taking like a square root, it has to be the exact same number, and that's not happening if we are looking at our value of a negative number. We just can't have two of the same number. So the square root of 25 is equal to 5. Negative on the outside is okay. Negative of the square root of 25 would get you negative 5. We can take the square root of 0. That's just going to be 0. But as I said, the square root of negative 25 is not going to be a real number. It will be an imaginary number, which we'll talk about in a couple of lessons from now. Because there's no real number that when multiplied by itself will give you that product of negative 25. Now you can take the cubed root of negative 27. That'll get you negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 will get you that negative 27. All right, so let's go do some examples. So our first example is taking the square root of 36, which is going to be 6. Square root of 0, as we talked about, will be 0. And this is 36 because 6 times, or this is 6 because 6 times 6 gets you 36. 0 times 0 will get you 0. For something that looks like this, where we have the square root of 4 over 49, understand you can break that up. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 49 is 7. Or you can just go straight from there. When it's all one value underneath and they're both perfect squares, you can do that. If we're looking at the square root of x to the 6th, that is going to be x cubed. You're really going to take that 6, you can divide it by 3, or by 2 because it's a square root to get your 3. You can also look at if you have 6 x's and you're looking at a square root, we're looking at groups of two the same to get there, right? Like 6 times 6, 0 times 0, 2 times 2, 7 times 7. So an x times x will pull out, which we'll get into a little bit later. So if you're looking at the 6, you're going to get 3 groups. You can also look at it at the fact that if you have x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd, remember we add our exponents, and that'll get us x to the 6th. So there's a couple of ways to look at this, but basically for this type, you can just divide by 2 if it's an even number, or if you're doing a cubed root, divide it by 3. Alrighty, and these of course would be under the radical and coming out. So the next thing we can look at is 9x to the 12th. Square root of 9 is going to be 3, and the square root of x to the 12, well 12 divided by 2 will get us 6. Negative square root of 81, square root of 81 is 9, and that negative will stick, so we'll have negative 9. Square root of negative 81, this is not a real number because we can't take the square root of a negative number. Now, the square root of 20 we can put in our calculator if they're looking for a decimal. We will learn later how to do exact, but for a decimal, we could do this. So this is to 3 decimal places. We could take the square root of a decimal of 0.0361, put it in our calculator, we get 0.19. So in some cases, make sure you're reading the directions on the problem in your homework. All right, we could look at cubed roots. So if we look at the cubed root of 8, well, that's going to be 2 times 2 times 2, because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, so it will be 2. If you're using your calculator and you're not sure how to do the cubed root, remember you can use your rooftop key, the caret key, and make a fraction of 1/3. If you were doing to the 1/5, you would, or the 5th root, it would be 1/5. 4th root would be 1/4. So just a little help on your calculator there. If we take the cubed root of 64, what times itself 3 times will get us 64? That would be 4. So 4 times 4 times 4. All right, as we talked about, again, we can take the cubed root of negative 27. That's going to be negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9 times negative 3 would be negative 27. And then if we want to do the cubed root of 8 over 125, again, you can break that up. You could just go, well, it's going to be this. Or you can break it up to the cubed root of 8 over the cubed root of 25. The cubed root of 8 is going to be 2, and the cubed root of 125 would be 5. 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 will get you 125. All right, so we can also do the 5th root of negative 32, and we can do the negative number because it's an odd root. And remember, in your calculator, you would put it as negative 32 raised to the 1/5 power, and you'll find that it's negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 all the way to 5 times will get you your negative 32. For the homework, x squared would be equal to that absolute value of x. And then if we have something that looks like this, we can take the square root of something squared. This will take care of that squared, so you're going to get x minus 2. But in the homework, they're going to want that absolute value because you don't know what the value of x is why they're doing that. And then if you want, you can try this problem here and see if you can get it right. So you could hit pause on this, work it, and then come back. It's the square root of 49, a to the 8th, b to the 36th. So if you're decided to pause and then you're coming back, square root of 49 would be 7, a to the 8, 8 divided by 2 would get you 4, and 36 divided by 2 will get us 18, so it'll be b to the 18. And that would have been your final answer.